let CouchBot fire away here, making sure that. Yeah, all right. Well, we got the alert from YouTube. That's good. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and fire away. Chris Courtney here, weekly workshop. It's time to nerd out with you. If you know me, and some of you do, many of you do not. I am a absolute 100% type nerd. Love typography. Talk about it all day long. For this particular workshop session, I want to get into the weeds a little bit. I want to focus on one very specific thing, and that's typographic classification. It's not something that I've seen a lot of people talk about with great detail, because it is a little inside. The term I'm going to use is inside baseball, meaning you've got to be really into typography. But I think it's really important. It's really important to know what it is that you're actually looking at. And so it's not just about how you talk about the typography, but it is the typography that you choose and why you choose it and where you use it. The classification system will actually assist you in determining what's proper to use in a particular instance. There are a lot of typography books that I reference quite a bit. This particular session centers pretty much on two: The Anatomy of Type, which is a Stephen Cole's book. It's absolutely fantastic. And then The Elements of Typographic Style by Robert Bringhurst. I reference that. It is my Bible. It literally is it's less than an arm length away pretty much at all times. Any of these four books, though, would be a very easy way for you to elevate your typographical game. So I would recommend any of the Ellen Lupton books and Jason Santa Maria as well. They're all excellent. The real thing that most people know about typographic classification begins and ends with serif and sans serif, or slab serif and script and Gothic. There's a lot of classifications that are very high level. There's lots of different serifs. There's lots of different sans serifs. But most people do not dive into that. They pretty much stop at, oh, that's a serif, which has the feet, or that's a sans serif, which doesn't have the feet. But nobody goes further. Today we're going to go further, and we're actually going to focus on not just serifs and sans serifs, but we're going to focus on three different types of typography within the serif world. The first one we're going to look at here is humanist, and I see Matt Bass has jumped in. He's got a question about something else. We'll come back to you, Matt. In the humanist world of serifs, we are looking at typography that feels like it's actually handwritten, and you can actually look at some of the structure of the glyphs that have been created, and they look like they were created with a pen. One of the things that I love about being able to do a presentation on this is, unlike a book which is kind of constrained by size, I can actually blow this thing up to 1,000 pixels in size. So when we begin to zoom in here, if you look at the structure of this R, it's extremely fluid. It looks like a hand has been involved in creating it. There's nothing that is structurally consistent with it. It's the way that it comes together and moves around. It's all different sizes, and it is as if a hand was writing it with a pen. Also, look at this bracket at the bottom that really creates the serif. Notice how it kind of comes in. It's not flat. It looks like it looks imperfect, like a human would have created it. And this is what the humanist serif is really all about. As many organic and imperfect touches as possible to really retain that feeling that a human was involved. If you look over here, another very important thing is to understand that the counter, and the counter is the open space inside of a glyph, the counter is always tilted, and it's consistently tilted in such a way that it's mirroring, like, as the hand would draw this glyph or letter form. Um, and that's something that's very consistent. As you can see, I've included a line that is 0 degrees, like straight up and down, and you can obviously see that this oval that is makes up the counter of the G is clearly off kilter. Now, a transitional serif is one that begins to move away from all of those handwritten pieces. And it has greater contrast. It also has greater consistency to the form overall. This is Baskerville. The last one we looked at was Garamond. And in Baskerville, if we begin looking around, what you'll notice, if we look at that same area of the R, this is far more consistent, and there's greater contrast between the vertical and horizontal stroke that's involved here. There is, this is beginning to feel a lot more like a machine was involved in creating the form. Additionally, look at the bottom of where these serifs are at, perfectly flat. Like that's going to rest right on the baseline and give you a really clean line all the way across, and that's really important. It's really important when you're trying to create a consistent design. That flat serif at the bottom is key. Also, unlike the humanist serif, which the terminals on the G and the A, they kind of moved around. They weren't consistent at all between them. Now we're beginning to see more consistent like terminals to across the glyphs that are involved. The other thing that's interesting, if Figma would actually work, it's like my internet is choking all of a sudden. Yeah, this is unfortunate. I think I'm going to have to, there we go, it came back. That's good. So we've got this this ball-like terminal that is here from character to character. I will note that the tails, though, on these are inconsistent with one another, and that's something that you see clean itself up when you move over to rational serifs. Now, the rational serif is machine-like. This is something that when you begin looking at the way that these letter forms or glyphs come together, it would be very hard to see much human interaction in the creation of this character. Back here at the R, you can tell that like creating this with a pen would be nearly impossible. Look at how thin that stroke is as the leg of the R comes up into this bowl, and then the consistency is it's consistent all the way through. The contrast, if you look at the vertical stroke here and you compare it to the leg of the R and the bowl of the upper R, it's all very consistent, very similar width. And then if you go horizontally, look at this as it connects here, and then the top. These are the same exact size. Similarly, we're getting more consistent with the terminals. So this becoming more geometric in structure. And then look at the tails here at the end. The very consistent tail now, where we didn't have that before in the transitional serif. For comparison's sake, let's just look at the structural difference from our humanist form, which was very, it wasn't consistent at all. It would look like somebody drew it with their hand, to the rational via transitional. You can see the letter form change and become more and more consistent. Right there through the middle of those R's is one of the easiest ways that you can tell. And I have picked out the R for that specific reason, so we can kind of see how this letter form kind of comes back in on itself. Additionally, when you look at the rational serif, this is a study in contrast even within that rational serif. So going from Playfair display over, you can see just how much more. Look at the term, not the terminal, but the bracket here on the bottom. Like it's just completely geometric. There's no curve to it at all. Bodoni is again, this has a bit more of a humanist feel, but it's really the consistency of the stroke that really puts us back in the rational camp, and then obviously Playfair display. So the big question here is, why does this matter? Well, why it matters comes down to where you use it. So if we were utilizing one of these for a headline, you can see the difference very quickly between Garriman, Baskerville, and Playfair. Playfair has a taller X height, which means the counters are more open. It draws more attention. It's more consistent. It definitely feels more like something that should be used at a large size. Equally, when we come over and look at this in terms of using it for a body text, it's very clear that the Playfair display has a lot of lights and darks because of the contrast in the strokes. It becomes harder to read because you have the letter appearing very clearly in some areas and less so in others. Where Baskerville and Garriman are very consistent in the tone. It's just like an even gray all the way across that. It's much easier to read by comparison with Playfair. So what you choose really does matter, and that's why when we get into classification, it's so much more important to be able to dive in and understand the classifications within the serifs and the sans serifs and the slab serifs than it is just to say serif or sans serif. So if you have any questions, feel free to jump on chris@newpragmatic.com. And otherwise, that's it for tonight. It's a quick workshop. It's a light one. Next week, I hope to be able to jump into more about typographic sizing and also pairing. But for this week, for the for the New Pragmatic workshop, I'm Chris Courtney. We'll see you later.